Husband lies and gaslights me, chooses my sister during my infertility, but now I'm pregnant and he's upset I'm still pursuing divorce. Growing up, my older sister Nicole and I were super close. She was like my ultimate best friend and the person I could always count on. From the time I could walk and talk, she was the one I turned to with all my questions and worries. Our parents always encouraged us to be tight-knit, and Nicole just had this natural warmth about her. She was patient, kind, and always ready with a hug or a comforting word whenever I needed it. As kids, we spent countless hours together building epic forts in our room and getting lost in our own world of make-believe with our Barbie dolls. Nicole had this sweet tradition of reading books to me every night before we fell asleep, which made bedtime something to look forward to. When I started going to school, I was a wreck and would cry a lot, begging our parents not to leave me alone. But Nicole, who was a few grades ahead, assured me she'd keep an eye on me. And she did. She'd always check in on me during her lunch breaks. Just knowing she was there was such a comfort. After school, Nicole would help me with my homework since our parents worked long hours. She'd patiently explain math problems or help me craft stories for English class, making me feel smart and capable. Looking back, I see now that our parents somewhat unfairly relied on Nicole to take care of me, which might have been tough on her. I always ran to her for help even more than to our mom because I felt she understood me better. Unfortunately, I was too young to realize how much Nicole struggled with her own mental health issues. Unlike me, she had no one to really lean on. Our parents worked full-time to provide for us and did their best, but looking back, I'm sure Nicole felt neglected. I remember walking into her room once and catching her cutting herself on her thighs. She recoiled in horror when she saw me, and I pretended not to notice because I didn't understand the seriousness of it. By the time she was about to graduate high school, Nicole had developed a real drug problem. Her grades tanked, and our parents got endless calls from the principal about Nicole getting into fights or mouthing off to teachers. Our dad was strict, and he'd lecture her for hours sometimes, even taking off her bedroom door as punishment. Nicole would just yell back, saying how much she hated school and that everyone was stupid. The arguments between them got so loud and intense that it was impossible to focus on anything else. I'd hide in my room trying to block it all out. Things kept getting worse, and the strain on our family grew heavier. One night, Nicole tried to run away with one of her sketchy boyfriends. My parents woke up to find a letter she left on the dining table filled with insults and threats to leave her alone so she could start a new life. My mom cried so hard, clutching the letter to her chest, while my dad's hands shook as he called 911. Nicole was still a minor and clearly not in her right mind due to the drugs, so the authorities took it seriously. The wait for news felt like forever. Eventually, they found Nicole in this seedy motel with her boyfriend who was involved in some drug operation. He got arrested, and Nicole was brought back home, claiming she had no clue about his side business. When she came back, I naively thought things would get better, that she'd realize how much our parents cared for her. But instead, she screamed and yelled at them for trying to control her life and getting her boyfriend arrested. It was like looking at a stranger. Her face was twisted with anger and her eyes were wild, like she was still coming down from a high. Dad, his voice shaky but firm, told her that they loved her but couldn't go on like this and that she needed professional help. Mom stood beside him, nodding through her tears, holding on to him for support. Nicole lost it, screaming that they were the ones who needed help and that she wasn't their prisoner. The moment they mentioned rehab, she went ballistic, throwing things and screaming even louder. I just stood there, numb and shocked by how much my sister had changed. You wouldn't believe what she threw at us. And whether it hurt us or not, she just kept screaming at our parents, threatening to kill herself if they made her go to rehab. But this time, our folks had had enough. Mom told Nicole straight up that, as a minor, they were responsible for her until she was an adult, and they couldn't just sit by and watch her ruin her life. Dad even had to lock her in her room for the night to stop her from breaking more stuff and hurting herself. It was seriously heartbreaking to see what drugs had done to my sister. The next few days were just a whirlwind of prepping and tough conversations. Mom and Dad didn't rest for a second trying to get Nicole into a rehab center, dealing with all the paperwork and making necessary arrangements. Meanwhile, Nicole was like a tornado, lashing out at us with mood swings from hell. One minute furious, the next in total despair. The morning she left for rehab was a day I won't ever forget. Watching my parents lead her out of the house, her eyes blazing with a mix of rage and helplessness, was gut-wrenching. I knew deep down rehab was her best shot at getting better, but it didn't make it any easier. I tried to give her a hug, but she shoved me to the ground and spit at me. I was so shocked because she'd never been that openly angry with me before. Mom comforted me, saying Nicole was just suffering and not to take it personally, but it still hurt. For weeks, I prayed and hoped she'd come back to us healed and whole. When Nicole finally came home after 2 months, she looked so much healthier. Her face wasn't as gaunt, and she even had some color in her cheeks. We were all so relieved. Mom's eyes were brimming with tears as she hugged Nicole gently while Dad gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I tried to hug her too, but she just ignored me and I stepped back, feeling awkward and unsure of what to do. On our way home, Mom kept telling Nicole how glad she was to have her back, and mentioned she'd kept her room nice and tidy. Dad had bought her favorite candies and cookies, and I'd made a card telling her how much I missed her. But Nicole didn't even glance at it. I guess Mom and Dad were too wrapped up in taking care of her to notice how off her behavior was towards me. The days that followed were super tense and confusing. Nicole spent most of her time in her room and dodged me whenever she could. I tried to give her space, hoping she'd just need time to adjust, but it was clear things were different. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she'd snap, her voice icy and harsh. "What do you want? Can't you just leave me alone?" One evening, when Mom and Dad were out, I thought it was the perfect time to patch things up and have a heart-to-heart. I knocked on her door and asked, "Nicole, can I come in? I just want to talk." But she screamed back, "Go away! I don't ever want to see your stupid face." I stood there stunned and hurt, not understanding why she was pushing me away when I hadn't done anything wrong. I missed my confidant, my homework helper, my late-night chat buddy. Now she felt like a total stranger. Mom and Dad did try to help us patch things up, but their efforts seemed to backfire. Every time they talked to Nicole about why she was angry at me, she'd blow up saying she wished I'd never been born and how she wished Mom had aborted me. Hearing that was soul-crushing because she was my hero, the one I always looked up to. To know she genuinely wished I didn't exist was the cruelest thing ever. Our family dinners, which used to be lively and full of laughter, turned into awkward, tense affairs. Nicole would glare at me, roll her eyes, or mock me whenever I talked about my friends or school. She'd say things like what a loser I was, or how nerdy I was, and how I didn't deserve any friends. I'd just pick at my food, trying to hold back tears, wondering what I'd done to make her hate me so much. Seeing the change in Nicole was devastating. She was carrying so much pain and anger, and I had no clue how to reach her. I missed her more than ever, but every attempt to reconnect was met with more hostility and rejection. Her anger escalated to the point where she even started plotting to hurt me. I'm severely allergic to peanuts, and everyone in my family knows it. We don't even keep peanuts in the house to be safe. One day, Nicole made chicken salad for dinner. I sat down with my family, not thinking too much of it. The first few bites were fine, so out of nowhere I started to feel a bit uneasy. My mom, who was just munching on her salad and staring at her plate, suddenly noticed tiny pieces of chopped peanuts mixed in. She yelled at Nicole, asking if she'd used peanuts because, well, everyone knows I'm allergic. Nicole just casually said she added them for crunch. By then, my throat was almost closing up and panic hit me as my breathing got all wheezy. I grabbed at my throat, gasping, while my mom jumped up and rushed over to me. "Nicole, how could you?" she screamed, her voice a mix of fear and anger. Nicole just stood there looking indifferent and muttered, "I don't think it's a big deal. She must be pretending." My dad sprang into action, grabbing my EpiPen from the kitchen drawer and quickly giving me the injection while Mom called 911, her voice trembling as she explained everything to the operator. Every second felt like an hour as we waited for the ambulance. I was so drained I couldn't even keep my eyes open as I lay on the floor, struggling to breathe. I felt such a mix of betrayal and sadness because my own sister, who used to care about me, had knowingly put my life at risk. The paramedics arrived quickly and got me to the hospital. The ride was a blur of sirens and concerned faces as I fought to stay awake. Once at the hospital, the doctors worked fast to stabilize me, and eventually my breathing got better. I remember later that night laying in the hospital bed, completely exhausted and drained. My parents sat by my side, their faces full of worry. "We're so sorry, honey," Mom said softly, tears streaming down her face. "We'll make sure this never happens again." Dad nodded, looking grim. "Nicole will have to answer for what she did. We won't let this slide." I don't recall the exact punishment Nicole got, but whatever it was, it felt way too light given the seriousness of the situation. The whole incident left me feeling so shaken. The trust I had in Nicole was shattered. I couldn't trust her anymore and started to feel unsafe at home. As time went on, I stayed in my room more and more to escape from her. Our parents tried to get Nicole into therapy, but her manipulative nature was so good that even the therapists were convinced by her. They often reassured Mom and Dad that there was nothing seriously wrong with her and downplayed her actions as a dumb mistake. The therapists' reassurances only made things worse between us because Nicole refused to apologize for endangering my life. I knew she was playing all of us like fools. I grew so scared of eating anything at home that I started going to bed hungry, which messed with my health big time. The fear that Nicole might tamper with my food consumed me, making me paranoid about every meal. Seeing my struggle, Mom came up with a solution. She bought a small refrigerator for my room that could be locked. She convinced me to keep some snacks in there, assuring me it would be a safe place where Nicole couldn't mess with my food. Her idea turned out to be a lifesaver. Knowing I had a secure stash of snacks that only I could access gave me a sense of control over my well-being and eased the anxiety that had plagued me. Without Mom's understanding and support, I might have continued to suffer in silence, risking my health even more. Looking back, I realize how close I was to developing an eating disorder due to the stress and anxiety caused by Nicole's actions. Mom's intervention prevented that from happening. When I finally graduated high school and went to college, it felt like a new chapter of freedom. It was a huge relief not to have to constantly watch my back or be scared of my sister. College offered me the freedom and independence I needed to grow without constant stress and anxiety. Living away from Nicole allowed me to focus on my studies and personal growth without fear hanging over me. I dove into new experiences, made supportive friends, and pursued my interests with newfound enthusiasm. I could finally breathe and explore who I wanted to be without the constant fear of getting hurt. This is when I met my husband, Keith. We were friends for a long time before we started dating. It was a natural progression for us since we both excelled in our studies and shared a love for anime. Our shared interests and deep friendship laid a strong foundation for our relationship, and before long, we fell in love. Keith was someone I could truly connect with on so many levels. We spent countless hours discussing our favorite anime series, debating characters and plot twists, and supporting each other through college life's ups and downs. He understood me like no one else, and I was drawn to his kindness, intelligence, and sense of humor. When Keith and I got married, my parents reluctantly convinced me to invite Nicole, assuring me that she had changed. Unlike me, Nicole never even went to college and had been living off our parents all these years, only working part-time as a cashier. Whenever I came home during college breaks, she'd find reasons to fight with me and disrespect me. I invited my sister to my wedding, hoping she could keep it together for just one day. However, Nicole's behavior at the wedding proved otherwise. She showed up wearing a white dress, a deliberate attempt to steal the spotlight on my special day. I was shocked and hurt by her blatant disregard for my happiness. So here's the deal. My happiness took a hit when my husband and his family were taken aback by my sister Nicole's audacity. She really tried to steal the spotlight at my wedding, typical Nicole move. Luckily, my dad stepped in and kicked her out of the venue. He told her to leave and even threatened to throw her out of the house if she dared to come back. Later, my parents apologized for not listening to me about not inviting Nicole in the first place. Besides that little drama, the wedding was perfect, so I didn't stay mad at my parents for long. Keith and I have been happily married for 3 years. We've got great jobs and even own a house together. Everything was blissful at first, lots of date nights and a healthy sex life. But then we hit a big roadblock. We couldn't conceive. We both really wanted kids, so we started going through every medical test imaginable, but the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with us. They just kept saying, keep trying. I've always believed that things happen when they're meant to, but Keith is much more methodical. He got obsessed with researching fertility issues and put me on different diets every month to increase our chances of getting pregnant. It was stressful and overwhelming. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd get angry and accuse me of not trying hard enough. He even compared me to his mom, who had no trouble having 3 kids. His harsh words and erratic behavior started creating a rift between us. And then things got worse. I caught Keith cheating on me twice, each time with different women he met at bars. He would beg me not to leave him, swear he loved me, and promise he wanted to start a family. But then he'd turn around and blame me for his actions, saying I drove him to it. I saw this pattern and realized I couldn't keep living like this. So I started distancing myself emotionally from the marriage. Last week, I finally opened up to my best friend about everything. I was too ashamed to say anything before. but she listened without judgment and helped me see that my feelings were valid. She encouraged me to prioritize my well-being and consider leaving Keith for good. The very night I planned to talk to Keith, he didn't come home. I called him multiple times, but he ignored me. Furious, I drove to his usual bar and to my shock saw him with Nicole. They were all cozy in a corner booth, laughing and kissing like it was the most normal thing in the world. I took some pictures, went home, cried in my car, then packed my bags and left. I drove straight to my parents' place and broke down in front of my mom. They couldn't believe Nicole would do something so vile, but the pictures didn't lie. My dad was livid and called Nicole telling her to come home. She showed up with Keith thinking they could explain how they were meant to be together. My dad threw her stuff out and my mom pushed them out the door, telling Nicole to never come back. Since then, Keith's been blowing up my phone trying to explain himself and saying how sad Nicole is about being kicked out. He blames me for getting our parents involved without talking to him first. Whatever. A quick update. My dad and his friends helped me move my stuff back to my parents' place. It feels weird but comforting to be back home. Nicole's now living with Keith and trying to reach out to our parents, but they're not interested in hearing her out. According to Keith, they accidentally met at the bar months ago, and Nicole was his shoulder to cry on. Keith knew how much history Nicole and I had, and he saw firsthand how she tried to wreck our wedding, but I guess he didn't care. As for Nicole, she's always had it out for me, and saw going after my husband as her way of asserting dominance. Maybe they even found the whole thing exciting. Who knows? So despite their affair, I'm talking to a divorce lawyer this week to move forward with my divorce. Update 2. Hey everyone, it's been a month since I last checked in, but I have some big news. I found out I'm pregnant. I've always wanted this, but the timing couldn't be worse. My parents think I shouldn't keep the baby because it might tie me to Keith forever, and I'm not sure I can handle that. I've got a lot to think about. I told Keith, and he immediately suggested stopping the divorce and starting marriage counseling. He even promised to break up with Nicole. I couldn't help but laugh. It was so absurd. I made it clear that even if I keep the baby, we'll only co-parent. Keith didn't take it well. He yelled and said he wished I'd gotten pregnant sooner so he could have picked me over Nicole. His reaction made me regret sharing the news at all. I'll update you on my decision about the pregnancy soon. One thing's for sure. I'm definitely divorcing him. Update 3. Hey, first things first, I'm officially divorced. Keith has to pay me a good amount of alimony, so I got a nice new place. Work's going well, and I owe so much to my parents and friends for their support. I also decided not to go through with the pregnancy. It was a tough choice, and I know not everyone will agree, but I wasn't in the right headspace to bring a child into this mess. It was heartbreaking, but I believe it was the best decision for both me and the baby. As for Nicole and Keith, they broke up soon after our divorce. They had a big fight, and Keith kicked her out. She tried to stay with her parents, but they wouldn't let her in. Now she's couch surfing and trying to get her life back on track. I hope she uses this chance to grow up and find a better path.